All right, let's jump right in. We're going to take a trip back in time, over a decade ago, to look at this really fascinating kind of grassroots project from a small community in Cambridge. And they were trying to do something huge, completely reshape education from the ground up.
So this was the message that greeted you on the homepage of the Cambridge Online Learning Community, or Cambolc for short. Talk about ambition, right? This wasn't just, here are some online classes. No, this was a bold call to action, a welcome to a whole new era of learning.
So you have to ask, what was behind all this incredible optimism? What future did they see that maybe the rest of us didn't? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dig into. Let's explore their vision. First up, let's talk about the grand mission, because this was way more than just putting some course materials online. It was a whole philosophy for learning, one they felt was built for what they called the fourth industrial age. And this little phrase, right there on their main page, it just says it all. They were thinking big, like globally big. Their dream was to empower people everywhere, believing that with the right tools, universal education wasn't just a dream anymore. It was actually within our grasp.
Okay, so what exactly were they building? They called it an online learning community, or an OLC. And the most important words here are people-driven and molded by its participants. This thing was meant to be a living, breathing project, shaped by the people in it, not dictated by some authority from the top. And it was actually inspired by a similar project in the nearby town of Haver.
Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting. Let's get into the core idea that made their whole approach so different. It was a pretty fundamental shift in how we even think about teaching and learning.
This quote, it just perfectly captures their entire philosophy. The idea that knowledge isn't something that's locked away in a teacher's brain. Nope. In the age of the internet, it's literally everywhere. The community's job was just to help people find it, share it, and learn from each other.
And here you can see the whole concept laid out. On the left, you've got your traditional push learning. That's the classic classroom, right? The teacher lectures and the info is pushed out to you. You're basically a passive receiver. But on the right, that's the Cambolc pull model. Here you, the learner, are in the driver's seat. You're actively seeking out and pulling the knowledge you need, and the community is right there with you to collaborate and help you along.
But they were also really practical about it. They knew it wasn't about throwing out traditional methods entirely. The key was that it's a spectrum, a continuum. Sometimes you might need a little push from an expert, and other times it's all about the pull. It's about using the right tool for the job.
Okay, so with that whole philosophy in mind, how did they actually go about building this thing? What was the blueprint for creating this peer-to-peer learning engine?
This idea is right at the heart of their peer-to-peer model. They truly believed that everybody has something valuable to teach. It doesn't matter if you're an expert gardener, a coder, or a great cook, your knowledge matters. The community was the place to unlock all of that shared wisdom.
Now take a look at the tech they used. There's nothing super fancy or expensive here, right? They built their entire platform using free, everyday cloud tools. Google Sites for the main portal, Google Docs to work on things together, Google+ communities for discussions, and this was a very deliberate choice to make it as easy as possible for anyone to join in.
And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? The barrier to entry was practically zero. By using tools that people probably already had and knew how to use, they just wiped away all those technical hurdles. It made it incredibly easy for anyone, from anywhere, to start contributing.
So we've covered the why and the how. Now let's take a little peek inside and look at the what. What were these people actually talking about? What were they learning together? This timeline from 2016 is just a fantastic snapshot. I mean, just look at the range of topics. 1 month, they're all in on square foot gardening. In the next, they're diving deep into the Internet of Things. Then they're exploring language, then food, well-being, smart cities. This is that pull model in beautiful, chaotic action, driven entirely by the community's own curiosity.
And they were pretty deliberate about organizing all these big conversations. They used hashtags to kind of build this intellectual map around huge topics like hashtag futurology, hashtag peeragogy, which is basically the theory of peer-to-peer learning, and even the future of hashtag assessment. It was a simple way to add a little structure to a community built on organic discovery.
As the project evolved over time and became more of a blog, that wonderful diversity just kept on going. You can see here some of the categories they wrote about later. I mean, you've got cutting-edge tech like AI and Raspberry Pi sitting right next to these fundamental human things like gardening and well-being. It's just perfect proof that a learning community can be both super high-tech and deeply human at the same time.
So where did this incredibly ambitious project end up? What is the legacy of the Cambridge online learning community? Let's take a moment to reflect on its journey.
While the original community portal eventually transitioned and evolved into a personal blog called Pennies of Thought, but the core spirit, that spark of curious, lifelong learning, it never went away. The quest continued, just in a new format, still exploring all those eclectic and interesting topics.
I think this quote from one of their old pages is just so insightful. They saw really early on that e-learning was becoming a commercial product, something to be sold to people. And Cambolc really stands as this powerful counterexample, a totally non-commercial, community-first experiment in a world that's now dominated by billion-dollar companies.
And really, that brings us to the final thought. Today, we're surrounded by these slick AI-powered learning platforms. They're super efficient for sure, but sometimes they can feel a bit impersonal. So what can we still learn from the beautifully messy, passionate, and deeply human-centered approach of a project like Cambolc? That's a question that's really worth thinking about.